Well, good day, everyone. Welcome to another Cambridge Financial Truth Be Told webinar. And my name is Bert Salazar, and I will be your host today for this short webinar. First and foremost, we want to let you know that we've had pretty rough last couple of weeks here in South Florida with Hurricane Irma. But we're very resilient here in South Florida as well, so we are rebuilding. Cambridge is fully operational, and we finally became operational about 3 days ago because we had no electricity whatsoever. So it was very difficult for us. It was very hot, very humid, and we're very excited about the future, and we're going to be able to rebuild and help a lot of our friends here in South Florida along those lines. Today, I want to take a few minutes and I want to walk you through a financial calculator that I use with the majority of my clients as they start to prepare and or think about retirement. The title for this webinar is Understanding Retirement Distribution Rates. Now, we also do a lot of podcasts. We do 2 podcasts every single week on different economic and investment and insurance topics in the marketplace, because we feel very strongly about educating our clients. Because at the end of the day, information without education leads to failure. So the more you understand about economics and finances, the better off you're going to be in the future. Now, we use, for this exercise, we're going to be using a Truth Concepts calculator. Todd Lanford out of Houston, Texas, is the founder of Truth Concepts. And his wife, Kim Butler, is also one of my mentors along those lines. And we've been friends, for approximately 10 years now. So what we try to do with these calculators at Cambridge is to take very complex and sophisticated issues and concerns and try to make it as simple as possible, because as long as there's no simplicity and there's no clear vision on behalf of the clients, there's a high probability that they're going to remain in the status quo and they're not going to be acting upon the things that they should be acting from a business perspective. Now, this calculator is called Future Requirements. I like to call it more like you can't get there from here. And what we're going to be discussing in this short webinar today is what happens when you get to retirement years. Are you going to have enough money? Are you going to run out of money before you run out of life? If getting old is bad, getting old and having no money is even worse and could become a nightmare for the majority of Americans in the marketplace and in the U.S. today. So I'm going to walk you through an exercise that I think you'll find very interesting. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback at the very end, and hopefully this is something that you can appreciate and understand. So we're going to start first with an individual who makes $100,000 a year in income. This is a 45-year-old individual. Now, at age 45, the majority of Americans have been putting their kids through college. They've been saving a little bit of money, but not much. They probably purchased a home. They had to save money to make a down payment on a home, and now they're making mortgage payments on a monthly basis. So between the ages of 45 and 65, it is truly when Americans and a lot of my clients really start thinking about the preparation for retirement. How much money do we need to set aside? How much money do we need to save? What kind of rate of return are we going to be receiving on those assets? And there's a lot of calculations that we do for them and that they have done for themselves for years. But once you get to the age of 45, now some people may start sooner because they're frugal, they're savers versus spenders. But for the most part, I'm going to use an age 45 rate for this exercise. Now, let's say that the same individual or same family also has $100,000 in existing assets, investable assets and reserves. Now, they could be in a mutual fund, they could be in a stock, it could be in a bond, it could be in a CD at a bank, it could be in their 401k or whatever it may be. But, you know, that individual is earning $100,000, plus they also have $100,000 of assets. The next area is we're going to click on total taxes. And here I'm going to use a 40% payment of taxes. Now, a lot of my clients, when they come into my office, we do tax planning. So they bring their tax returns for us to review. And I ask them what kind of tax bracket they are in. Most of the time, they tell me that they're somewhere between 25 and 30%. And I tell them right off the bat that they pay a lot more in taxes than that. And the reason is that most of us, most Americans, and most of my clients, if not all of my clients, only think of taxes as the federal income taxes they pay, and or if they live in a state that also requires them to pay state income taxes. Those are the only two figures that I normally get. What we need to realize is if you're earning $100,000 of income per year, the question is, well, how much of that money is going to taxes before you get your hands on it? So when I use a number of 40%, now for a number of my clients, the numbers are higher, could be 50, 55%, because we factor in all taxes, not only federal income taxes, but also state taxes. Now, I don't do that for my Florida clients because we don't have state taxes in Florida. But my clients pay Social Security taxes. They pay Medicare taxes as well. They pay property taxes. You go to a gas station to gas up, you're going to pay gas taxes. If you have investments, you're going to pay capital gains taxes. You may pay short-term dividends taxes. You pay ordinary income taxes on your investments, on your passive investments. So when you factor in all the different taxes, you fly on an airplane and you buy an airline ticket, you're going to pay taxes. Just about everything that you acquire or purchase in the United States today, you're going to pay some kind of a tax or fee. Now, sometimes they try to disguise a tax by telling you that you're paying, that it's a fee, not a tax. But at the end of the day, if it's being paid at the time that you're making a purchase, then it is an economic tax that is being imposed on you. The second area here is we're going to choose a lifestyle. Now, I'm going to use for this exercise a 20% lifestyle, meaning that 20 cents out of every dollar that this client is earning is going to go toward maintaining the lifestyle as well. Now, remember, in taxes, you're also paying mortgage taxes, so that's something that is very critical to understand. Yes, you get to deduct the payments, the interest payments on that, but you also have the property taxes that we discussed earlier in this webinar. For debt service, I'm going to use a 35% because this is the experience that I have had with my clients after 28 years in the business. Now, debt service is the amount of taxes and interest that you are paying in order to service a debt. So, for instance, if you have a mortgage, you're making interest payments. Just so you'll know, according to statistics, but by most of the banking industry, over 85 cents out of every dollar, or 85% of every single dollar over the first 10 years in a 30-year mortgage goes toward interest. So when we try to discuss debt service with our clients, we want to use not the interest rate, but the volume of interest that they're paying. So if you have an automobile, you're financing that automobile. You're also paying interest on that finance. Credit card debt, that's some major problems that we see when we engage clients in getting them to a comfortable retirement plan. We take a look at the kind of debt they're getting involved. Is it a good debt? Is it a bad debt? If it's not a deductible debt, it's a bad debt. So credit card is not a deductible debt, so that's a bad debt to have. On top of that is the interest rate that you're paying and the volume of interest that you're paying on all that rate. So in this exercise, this individual is earning $100,000. $40,000 of that is going toward taxes. $20,000 is going to lifestyle. 35% is going to debt service. So at the end of the day, 95 cents out of every dollar, or 95% of the earning for this client, is going toward taxes, lifestyle, and debt service. That only leaves 5% for savings. And that is very critical to understand, because I would argue, and this is all based on statistical data, the majority of Americans barely save 5%. Now, you may find yourself that as you get closer to retirement, you may be saving more. You may be saving, 15 to 20% of your income because you're playing catch up. But when you factor an entire business or working career, starting, let's say, at age 20, all the way through age 65, sometimes age 70, when you average the savings rate along those lines, is seldom any higher than 5% overall. In this exercise as well, this client wants to retire, and he or she wants to receive 100% of their current income for retirement. Now, obviously, I have had a number of clients that have walked into my office and they say to me, Bert, I visited with a financial advisor a few years ago, and he or she told me that I only need 70% of what I'm currently making today for retirement purposes. The question is, well, how would you like to be earning $100,000 today, the day before you retire, and then starting tomorrow, you'll start earning $70,000? How is that going to feel? Now, we're going to touch upon that in the next few minutes. But for now, let's identify an individual who's making $100,000 today, and he or she wants to continue to earn that $100,000 throughout their retirement years. In this exercise, once this individual reaches retirement years, they're going to go into a different set of calculations. But for this, let's say this is a 45-year-old, so years until retirement will be 20 years, because this individual is going to retire at the age of 65. Although I am seeing more and more often than not, more clients are postponing their retirement. They're no longer thinking about age 65. They're thinking about 67, 68, 70. Some clients tell me that when they retire, they're going to work part-time because they want to continue to earn income, which is something that I highly recommend, because one of the major problems that I see with a lot of my retirees today, and I have had retirees for many years, is that you need to stay active in retirement, because otherwise your brain is going to die before your body does. So I always recommend to either pick up a hobby, work part-time, travel, and do a number of things that are very critical from a retirement perspective. Now, the next area is going to be the inflation rate. Now here, inflation is something that it's very important to understand, because of the fact that it is considered a silent killer. And what do I mean by that? Well, for instance, if you look at the governmental numbers on inflation today, the inflation rate in the United States has been hovering around 2.8 to 3% over the past 10 years. Now, you would think that that is a real number, and I would argue that it is not a real number. Because when you take a look at the CPI rates, the Consumer Price Index rates in the United States, yes, they will tell you that inflation is 3%, but there are three major factors that they don't put into those calculations as they determine the rates for the inflation in this country. Food, energy, and gas prices. So if you exclude those three items, yes, I would argue that inflation in the United States is 3%, but the numbers are much higher than that when you try to go to a major food chain and do purchases like I do with my wife on a weekly basis here in South Florida. The other major issue with inflation, and this is one that is very important and critically to understand, is that inflation is not tax deductible, which means that the more income you earn and the higher you go up in your tax bracket, the higher the inflation rate, because you have to earn a given rate of return, pay taxes on that given rate of return, and then you hope that the net amount that is left after paying taxes will be sufficient to stay with inflation or stay ahead of inflation. And inflation is nothing more and nothing less than the fact that everything will cost more in the future, and you're going to see that in a minute. So some people will say that inflation in the United States is 5% today. Others may say that it's 3%. I'm going to use the average, so I am going to put a 4% net inflation rate. Now, as you can see in this calculator to the right, you will notice that what it means is that someone who's 45 years of age today, that is earning $100,000 of income, they must be earning $219,112 in 20 years from now in order to maintain the same purchasing power that the $100,000 is generating today. And that's a major issue and a major problem that most of my clients have failed to understand. Now, they do understand it once they start working with myself or my firm, because we pay a tremendous amount of attention to taxation and inflation as we do planning for our clients. Now, there are 10 major eroding factors. We don't have the time today to cover the other 8, but taxation and inflation are the 2 major ones. Now, let's do some projections so we can get a feel as to where it is that we're going. And the next area is going to be, well, what's going to be the annual withdrawal rate? So let's say that this individual at age 65 has $1 million in assets that he or she will be using for retirement purposes. So now the question is, well, how much of that asset is the client going to be withdrawing on an annual basis? Now, unless these clients have been doing proper planning with us, and they have done economic models, and they have done these calculations, and they have done planning, most of them are only going to live off the interest that their investments are returning, because they haven't done proper planning that would give them the leverage or flexibility to invade principal, because if they do so and they're married, what happens if they live a long life and then the first spouse passes away? Will there be any income left to provide a benefit to the surviving spouse? So unless they've done proper planning, most of them are just going to opt in and take a withdrawal rate. Now, depending on which publication you read in the marketplace, many publications will tell you that In today's interest rate environment, which is very, very low in nature, taking anything more than a 3% distribution rate per year will probably have the person run out of money before running out of life. Now, the calculations and the publications that I have read in the past will say that if you take anything over a 3% distribution rate, there's an 89% probability that the retiree is going to run out of money prior to reaching mortality. And that's a very sad thing to be able to do, and that's a very hard place to be able to find yourself in as you're doing your mathematics and retirement calculations. So for this exercise, I'm going to use a 3% distribution rate, which basically means that this 40-year-old who's earning $100,000 a year, if he or she wants to maintain the purchasing power of those $100,000 a year, starting at age 65 and moving forward, they're going to have at age 65, $7,303,744 in a savings or investment account in order to be able to maintain the purchasing power of retirement. Now, if that individual would have had, instead of $100,000 in existing assets saved today, if they would have had $3,333,333, then obviously the growth of that money to age 65 would have been equal to the $7.3 million that you see there on your screen. So here's where the exercise comes into place. And this is why I call this calculator the "you can't get there from here" calculation. And the reason for that is that unless you do proper distribution planning, there's a very high probability that Americans are not going to save sufficient money to take them through their retirement years. So for instance, if I came to all of you and I said to you that I could guarantee you an 8% rate of return year in, year out, no matter what, from age 40 to age 65, how many of you would opt in for this type of investment? Now, understanding stock market volatility, and although the market has done fairly well in the last couple of years, but obviously we all remember what happened 10 years ago with the stock market, I think most of you are going to take me on the exercise and saying, you know, Bert, I'll give you every single dollar that I save every single year, and I'll give it to you, and you can invest it on my behalf if you can guarantee me an 8% rate of return. Well, if I do that, here's what would happen. I was able to get you to just shy of $800,000. So you're way, way south of the $7.3 million that you need to have at age 65, although I was able to guarantee you an 8% rate of return. Well, what would happen if I can guarantee you 10% if instead of 8%? Well, we do a little better, but you know, we're at $1,088,000 as opposed to 7.3. Can we continue to play this game? What if I use a 12%? What if I can guarantee each and every one on this webinar a 12% rate of return, rain or shine, every single year for the next 20 years or so of your working life? We would still be way short. So at the end of the day, what would be the rate of return that you would have to obtain on your investments in order to hit the $7.3 million that is required in order to maintain your standard of living? And the answer is 22.21% return. Every single day, every single year for the next 20 years, in good days, in bad days, in good markets, in bad markets, whether the market has done very well, whether it has done very bad, until death do us part, you have to get a 22.2% rate of return in order to make it to the promised land. Now, it gets even worse than that, because let's say that now you want to say, well, I get to my retirement years, but now I have to continue to earn a rate of return throughout my retirement years. And if I'm going to live another 25 years in retirement, which is happening quite often nowadays, what kind of rate of return would I need? And the answer is, you would still have to get a 7.22% rate of return every single year once you hit the age of 65 until you die at the age of 90, based on this calculation. Now, is earning a 22% rate of return possible? I guess I could build an argument that anything is possible in this world. The question is it probable? And the answer is absolutely not. So what other things can we do for this client? So we can say, as many financial gurus are saying to our clients every single day is, well, but Mr. Client, you don't need 100% of your income in retirement in order for you to live comfortably. You only need 70%. Okay, so let's use a 70% calculation, and let's find out what kind of rate of return are you going to need if you want to mitigate those retirement challenges in the future. And the answer is, okay, so you went from a rate of return of 22.21% to needing a rate of return of 19.9. Now, it's a little bit more probable than 22, but the probability of that happening every single year for the next 20 years is slim to none. Do we still to reduce the standard? Do we continue to reduce the standard of living? Let's say that now is not 70%, it's 50%. Okay, now instead of trying to live on $100,000 throughout retirement, you're only going to live on $50,000 a year. Well, if you do that, then now the rate of return goes down to 17.7. And if I want to be even crazier than that, and I want to use a 30%, I'm going to live on 30 cents out of every dollar that I have been earning while I have been employed, but I'm going to reduce my income by 30% in retirement. Well, you still need a 14.48% rate of return every single year until the day that you retire, and then you're going to need a 7.22% return every year thereafter until your mortality at age 90. What am I trying to say with this? What I'm trying to say with this is that there is a major difference between the accumulation rates and the distribution rates. While you're investing and working in your life and in your career and in your business, most of us are very concerned about the accumulation rate, but we don't pay attention to the distribution rate because of the fact that distribution is not something that you think about. Now, the minute that you retire, the rules of engagement change completely. So you go from an accumulation rate to a distribution rate. Now you're more concerned about how much income you can get in retirement. And remember that during your accumulation years is people at work, meaning that you are working for your money. When you get into your retirement years, is assets at work. It's now your money working for you as an individual investor and or as an individual retiree. So it's something very critical. Now, as Paul Harvey, the famous Paul Harvey used to say, now the rest of the story. And what I mean by this is, if you want to be comfortable in retirement and you want to hit your retirement goals, you need to dedicate time to understand how money works. Now, I deal with clients that make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in income. Some make over $1 million a year in income. So they know how to make money, but many of them don't know how money works. And when we start using these calculations, we start to use retirement straddle techniques that we specialize in our firm in order to make certain that this situation doesn't happen on behalf of our clients, that our clients have the ability to maintain their standard of living at 100%, that they're able to guarantee their income in retirement. And that's where you use retirement straddles that would allow you to use the best features and benefits of different financial instruments in order to provide for a safe and successful retirement plan. Now, as I always say in our podcast and webinars, the goal for Cambridge and my firm and for me personally is to change the way that people see things. Because when you change the way that you see things, the things you see change. And remember that methods are many and principles are few. Methods are always changing, yet principles never do. Please stay tuned for future webinars, which we will be conducting on different economic topics on a regular basis in this channel of ours. Don't forget to go into your podcast app and download the Cambridge Financial Literacy Podcast Program. We do 2 podcasts a week on different topics that you can hear at your leisure. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out at Bert, B-E-R-T Salazar, S-A-L-A-Z-A-R, at Cambridge, F as in Frank, P as in Paul, LLC.com, and or feel free to reach out at 786-766-1042. Thank you and have a wonderful, wonderful day.